Hello guys, hope you're doing great. So today we are going to some of the k8s commands which you're gonna use, or it would be very useful in day-to-day life. And you can see this particular commands, or you can use this and reuse this particular commands from my GitHub repository. And I'll paste the link in the comment and discussion area under the video. So we have a k8s cluster which we have spun already. So let's go go to our k8s cluster. And since you know, right, in section 1 we have already provisioned our cloud shell, we have set up our cloud shell, so we'll be able to see our cloud shell without any issues. So it is now opening. So let's go. That we have opened our k8s non-hardware cluster. So how you would log into non-hardware cluster is just go to this view Kubernetes Dashboard, and if you don't have CLIs, or if you want to interact from your partial window, then you can install CLI. How you're gonna do is you just go to your partial instance, and then you just run your particular. You can run this particular, it would install all the CLI commands. That's one way. And but yeah, the Azure made our life simpler by just giving Cloud Shell. So I'll go to my Cloud Shell, I'll copy this particular case credentials, and I just run it. So what it would do is, okay, so there's one particular case where you will not be where it's not able to recognize what is this particular resource group. Okay, and this certain cases where you can always set the context of your subscription. So you can do by running az account set, and then I would give my subscription name. Remember, if you have spaces, don't forget to include them in quote. And now my account is set, and now it can find the resource group which I was trying to get credentials. So you can see it would have set something called as kube config. So you can see the kube config, what exactly it has. So if I this is Monaco, and if I go, I can see like it opens this one, and let's go to kube, and then I can see the kube config. So the kube config will have the token and everything as we but it also gives the client data of all of the cluster which you have created till now, and or if you have got the access till now. So what I'll do is I do not need this, I'll just close this editor, and then what we'll do is, like, let's go ahead, we will be going to and execute a lot of commands. So one particular basic thing what we can do is like go and browse the Kubernetes default dashboard, and I minimized it. So let's pin up our default dashboard. So it's opened the default dashboard, and this is my default dashboard which Kubernetes has to offer. Since it's being a non-RBAC cluster, you do not have permissions you don't have permissions which actually comes. And I'll just go and open to get the token for this particular RBAC cluster. So if I scroll down, I can see this is my, I guess, RBAC. So I'll copy. Yes, I copied, and then I copied the token, and then I'll, because once you click Control C, it would disconnect the dashboard connection, because it basically closes a proxy which you have. So I need to reopen again, and then it would give me to give a control to kube token. So I have the token in my hand, and I've signed in. So you can see there, this is the default one, and these are all of the rules which we have. So the cluster rules are the rules which would be defined at the cluster level, and then So these are important because and you would never try to manipulate these particular rules, but you can create something called as namespace rules or something which would be at your namespace context. Since you can go ahead and create a namespace, so you can see there are a lot of namespaces. The four default, these are the three basic namespaces and which are used by AKS, and the default is the where you can create, but you are always open to create a new namespace and do your deploy your applications underneath it. Since we have two nodes, we should be able to see the two nodes, and you can see the CPU and the memory usage. So these are sort of a default monitoring which the Kubernetes has to offer. And there's a concept of persistent volume. So persistent volumes are nothing but sort of you can say is a solid state your own drives, disks which you have for virtual machines, something like that. So you have persistent volumes by default, but you will not be able to see in here because it's not managed by us. And if you're provisioning even like something called as a managed disks, then also you will not be able to see the managed disk in this particular area. And if we go to storage classes, so these are the specific storage classes which this particular AKS cluster is using to store few of the metrics and other particular parameters. And if I go to, so these are all populated for the default. And if I go to overview, we have cron jobs, so sort of scheduled jobs. We have daemon sets, we will come to know about it later. And we have deployments. So we particular, when you want to deploy a service, so we create a deployment YAML, and then we create a service YAML which we will deploy. We have jobs which you can create, and the pods are basically sits on the nodes. So inside the pods only we'll have a container running, and inside the container we can host our services. And we have the replica sets, like if you have a service which you want to run, and if you want to make copies of them, so you define as a replica sets. And we have few of ingresses, so which is underneath like particular load balancing and the other thing which we will spend after nginx, after we run a lot of commands which we're gonna use daily, right? And then we can see the services. So this is the typical Kubernetes service which is running, and you can see the cluster IP which it has occupied and the endpoints. So let's go, and this is a secrets. This is something new, custom resource definitions. Okay, let's go, let's end this up, and let's go. So I have the same referenced Kubernetes command in here as well. So you came to know how to log into the AKS. So you have the AZ AKS get credentials, the resource group, and the name of the cluster and the subscription. So we have already done. And what happens in certain cases, like like sometimes your kube config may be corrupt. So in that you can actually go ahead and run an overwrite existing. So you can see here, so over the time, over the months, what happens, your kube config file, it would be so overloaded with a lot of the cluster which you would have created in the past, or you're managing for your customer. So what you can do, you can actually get rid of this particular old entries by just adding the, so I'll go here, and so each time you get an AKS credentials, get credentials, it will actually create a kube context. If it is already then it would add an entry. So I would just do an overwrite existing. So let's see whether this particular data is goes off or not. So I'll go uh, so um, so that's cache, and I'll just go to config.txt, and so it would reset this one. And what we can do is, like, if you want to see the you do not want to see the cast one, I'll go ahead and I'll open again the editor, the monadic editor. So you can see the non-RBAC cluster in here, and the old entry of the other one is gone. And let's go. ahead, and then like let's see what the, yes, there's another thing, like the admin. If you are admin to the cluster, you can always uh, you're always open to, okay, let's clear it up. You can always get the context of various credentials, get credentials with an admin context. So it would get that admin context as well. So admin context will have a different like will have a kube config, but if the user is different, the same, it would create another kube config with the admin. If you want, you can see here. mm, Minimize. So lost. Okay, it's not refreshing it up, but yes, you can check that kube config, the similar which I have checked. And then like after this I can go with, so you can also check, like sometimes your kubectl version may not be compatible for any few of the commands. So you can see the version of kubectl, and you can see the client version and the server version. So there's a difference, and this is very important in certain cases, like where you have specific error and it would be throwing up with your specific kubectl version which you are using at the server or the client version. Okay, so basically the commands, if you run, then you all need to, if you have any issues with the kubectl version or any of the features if you are using, then in order to raise a support ticket or post onto GitHub for your clarity, you can always post you the versions, the client and the server versions. uh, this is a very useful command. And you can, if you don't want to remember this particular command, like where you are going and saying that, since basically using a non-RBAC cluster where you will not be seeing this particular commands by default, and you cannot browse like you can't see how to frame the AKS browse. So you can just go ahead and just take a cluster info, AKS cluster info. So this would give you all the details. Kubectl is now recognized. Kubectl cluster info. Okay. Strange. So probably this is uh, okay. Cluster info. Yes. So if you type just kubectl cluster info, you'll get the Kubernetes master, which I was saying. You can just see the master where it is running, but you actually cannot. You cannot modify anything because that's managed by Azure. And this is the metrics server. So basically the metrics server are this particular the API which exposes the metrics of your cluster. So this is very important in cases like in cases where you want to read the metrics, like the AKS cluster, how exactly it is doing. So those metrics, how exactly it is doing, which means that CPU, the networking, the other particular metrics are exposed, so that it can be used by the many of the open source tools like Prometheus. So we will be discussing while we'll be integrating with Prometheus. And then like that's one particular thing which where you're going to use your metric server. And this is a code DNS stuff, then the proxy on which it is exposed. So this is one command which is useful. And so you can also see of the cluster issues. And for all namespaces you can pick it. Basically, if you if you want to log in as an admin, so you can go to AKS credentials, you can log in as admin, so it will give you a lot of elevations to access many of the kubectl commands which you can run. Okay, so you have already something called as kubectl get secrets. Okay, so secrets, since you are admin, so you can get the secrets from all of the namespaces. and this being non-RBAC, probably you can use your normal credentials as well. So these are the secrets which are already there, and if you want to see the content of this particular secret, so let's see if I have a default token in here and the default namespace. So I'll replace my namespace name as default, and the secret name is this one, and I'll just run this command to get the secret content. So this may be useful in many of the sorry so this would be useful in many of the cases where you do not want to log into your dashboard to see the secret content. So you can see this is this particular token and other particular data, and this is a cert. So this is base64 encoded format of this particular cert which you are seeing in here, and you can get the gist about what are the secrets. So basically this is one of the TLS cert, if I'm correct. If you want to know what is the type of secret it is, so you can see it is a service account token type. So you will have TLS secrets as well. Like if you have SSL certificate, then you can actually pass your SSL certificate and the token and base64 encoded to your AKS cluster, and you can configure Nginx, and you will have an HTTPS connection set up over your cluster, which we will be doing over further videos. So these are the basic secrets which would be created by default, and you just saw like how to open and see them. So, and another one a beautiful thing about you can just scale your instances very easily. But for that, let's go and check our nodes. And nodes, I'll just make it as again all namespaces. So as I said, like namespaces are like sort of logical boundaries. So you can see this is a particular the two instance nodes which we are running. If you want to know about any of the particular the resources on AKS, so you can just go and describe the nodes or describe any resource in here. You give the resource and the resource type and the resource name, and specifically it would be good if you can give a specific namespace name as well. So you can see, so you have a lot of good description about your particular node which is running, and basically the labels, the what it has been assigned, and it would be useful in cases of certain the features which you're going to use. And you can see the few of the parameters where if your dashboard is not working, then you can get this particular data of your, like how your CPU is doing, whether it has it is like whole, like that it if it had reached certain thresholds like memory threshold, or disks are overutilized or something like that, or network is unavailable, you can get this particular gist from this particular simple command. That's very great when you have UI get impacted, like the Azure portal is not working fine in giving these particular parameters. You can see these particular 4 disks have been attached, and then you can see there are a lot of use content which you can see. And here is this is one particular places where you can see the pods, how many pods are running, and when it had started last. So the age shows like the node age when that particular virtual machine is being run. Okay, so if it has went through any of the restarts or something like that, you would see this particular age getting changed, and you can easily figure out the issues with any of the nodes if it has a less age. And it also has a memory limit and other particular characters which it shows. And on top of that, you have the disks which are attached, but these are the four disks which we were seeing in there. And so this one is like says the state or the reason. If the disks has certain issues, then this particular message would be popped out in here. So it also shows about the details about the allocated resources which you have. And let's go to move to the another command. So similarly, like what I was saying is, so this is a particular command like kubectl describe the resource type, the resource name, and the namespace name. So this is very useful. And what you can do, like if you have certain deployments, like hopefully I don't have any deployment because I've just rolled my so it did not find anything in the default namespace where it would run query by default. But yeah, I can go to all namespaces and check if any of the deployments are running. So you can see the metric server. These are all of the deployments. So if you want to, run another instance of the Kubernetes dashboard for scalability and other thing, you can actually go kubectl scale, and then you can mention the replicas, how many replicas you want for them. Since this is a particular example where I'm spinning up one particular deployment from the engines, so it would be passed upon like this. So if you want to know about any of the, so if you want to know about or get this particular data about a particular deployment and what is the exact name of that particular deployment, you can go that you can perform the same describe, and you can there's this Kubernetes dashboard, and then and this is a deployment type. So you can come here, and then you can, instead of nodes, you can name it as deployment. Cannot be required that it retrieved on the namespaces, so we can make it very specific from system cube system. So yes, so it got you this particular data. If you go around here, then the image is the Kubernetes dashboard MCR, something like this, and and this is the deployment.kubernetes.io. So this is particular annotation which you can find it from, which you can find to make a replica. So like this, if I go here, I'll just replace this, and then I'll give the Kubernetes dashboard as here as the name of that particular deployment, and then I can create a replica of them. So that's one thing. And so another thing is, like, you can always actually go ahead and your freedom to drain in nodes. So you can see get nodes, so you have the nodes which are running, okay. And in certain cases, if your node is not running as expected due to issues, then you can actually drain your node. So in order to drain your node, so this is sort of like stopping your node gracefully. So I'll go ahead and I'll drain the node. Okay, so if you go here, so it says like it cannot delete blah 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 the particular daemon sets which are running on top of it, but you can something force or something parameter, if I remember correctly, you can actually use it. Yes, so unable to drain node, but there would be a command which you can use forcefully. But yeah, let's go and check the nodes whether, yeah, so you can see it has drained the node. So it took out of the pool, out of the agent pool, and scheduling is disabled, which means that any of the pods request or service request will not, deployment container request will not come here, rather it would go in here. So that was the status says. And if you go and access the same in you can see in here. So if I go to my availability set, so to see the virtual machines, so it says the virtual machine is running because we actually didn't stop, we disconnected from getting assigned with other upcoming requests. Okay, so the safe ways of fixing your issue with your node, whenever it has certain issues of connectivity, you can actually drain them, you can stop, and you can restart them. Okay, if you stop and restart, then what are the services which are there would be fixed up, mostly the OMS agent and other thing. And once you do a stop, and then what you need to do is, like, you can go and uncordon them, so like disconnect it. So what I can do is I drain, I've did, so I'll go and uncordon. change the state after this uncoded. So basically when you bring back your cluster, so once you restart your cluster, so once it like stopped and restart your cluster, you uncordon them, which means that it would actually join your nodes back to the pool. So you can see it again becomes into the ready status, as it was ready scheduling disabled when you actually drained them. So that's one particular thing in order to fix your particular issues with your cluster. So yes, so any issues with your specific nodes, you can always use drain the node, which would gracefully take the machine out and reroute the request coming to your this particular node, the troubling node, to the another, and then get back the node by just uncordoning them after the few of the stop and restart. That was one thing which I use specifically for the customers. And the other thing is us like kubectl get pods namespace system. So these are sort of getting specific pods from your namespace, specific kube system namespaces. So you can see these many pods are running, so you can see the OMS agent which is running. So basically these OMS agents, since I'm running two particular OMS agents, so that's why two instances of nodes, so each instance of nodes will have each OMS agent running underneath it. So if there is any issue with what happens basically, so when you would be using a cluster, so if you go inside the particular cluster, so if you go to insights particular parameters, so you can see in these particular dashboards datas which are getting displayed. So these data may not come due to underlying infra patch updates and other thing. So, and these particular data which you are seeing with the controllers, you will not be able to see, and the OMS agent would be unresponding. It would go out dark, or go out red, or grayed out, or even you can't see deployments, containers, anything, any data you want, you can't see. In those cases, what you can do is like you can actually kill this particular OMS agent. So what you can do is like you can simply go ahead and like delete your OMS agent. So it's deleting your OMS agent is simple. So you just go ahead, copy the name of the pods. You can actually delete the pods without hesitation, because your deployment is will be there to take care of spinning up the pod again. So I'll go ahead and kill this particular pod. Okay, so the pod is being deleted. So you can see CSGX7, that's an agent which is running in this particular pod. So I've deleted the agent, and I'll get pods again. So you can see it has quickly spun up another agent in that particular pod. So that's the beauty of a case in here. So if you have any of the agent which is unresponding, you can quickly create with this particular command. And there is something called as a concept of the like SSL certificate you can use with your AKS cluster. So like AKS as of now takes the SSL certificate into a particular format. So you can create a TLS secret. Okay, so kubectl create secret TLS type of secret, and this is my secret name. So you broke down your SSL certificate, since you get from your service holders, like you from your infra team, you get the SSL certificate. You take the key and you take the cert and you pass it on like this, and then you give the namespace name where exactly you need to create a TLS cert in it, and you're done. And then you can use engines to map your TLS secrets to a specific service for which you want to tag it. So that we will go through in future. And dashboard, you know how to go through. And sometimes what happens, so your dashboards are okay, but so what happens, like if I'm running, if you go to my if I go to AZAK's browse back, So think that I'm running this particular browse, so it would create it. So it had created in on 8001, and sometimes what happens, like the Cloud Shell would go timeout within 20 minutes of its running, right? It has a lifetime. If you're not running anything, if you're idle, then it would log out automatically. But what happens, the port which you have opened for this particular dashboard is still open, and like you can see that, like you can use them. So what happens, so like in that cases, like you did not gracefully control C and you killed your dashboard, right? So in those cases, what you can do, you can always, like if the port 8001 is occupied, which your this particular dashboard would throw, then you can use something called as listen port, and you redirect to any of the new particular this particular new port. So I am now redirected into 8003. So this is one particular thing which I found out during my execution of AKS. So you can use them, and that gonna save your time. And the other thing is Kubernetes dashboard is not opening. Okay, so another particular issue which you see specifically with Kubernetes is, like sometimes you using the RBAC cluster, you may not be able to open the dashboard. So in that case, if you want to open a dashboard, you actually need to create a cluster role binding. So the role binding is like a mapping between your role, the role can be cluster role, it can be a normal role. So normal roles can be are assigned at the namespace level. Cluster role is at the role, and it can be accessed by any of the namespace users. And if you want to bind the cluster role with any of the user or AD group, you use cluster role binding. Okay, so what happens is, like we gonna choose up a role, a cluster role, which is the cluster admin role is a default defined role which is there, so which you can run. I'll show up those particular cluster roles, and cluster admin has access to all of over the cluster and the namespaces, and it's in the namespace cube system. And we have something called as a service account. So service account, or you can use an AD group, or you can use something called as a user. Like if you are using RBAC AKS cluster, you can use this particular user to assign him a few of this particular cluster role binding. So then once you apply this particular create a cluster role binding, then with the cluster admin credentials, he will be able to access the dashboard. So this way we have access the dashboard, because this being a non-RBAC, it do not have a control. But in an RBAC, you will have a control, and you can actually, if you're not bothered about your user to going with the cluster admin, you can actually give this particular command to run it, or you run this particular command, and then he will be able to access the dashboard. So that's one particular thing where you will be seeing your dashboard spinning, but you will see all of the it cannot it would say, your dashboard would say, like it cannot fetch, like let me show that. So if you go here with 8003, and when your particular Kubernetes dashboard loads up, it would show you up a lot of yellow warning stating that your service account do not have access to query do not have access to create or to do not have access to the dashboard or the cube system. In those cases, you can always use this particular cluster role binding, which I was saying you can create, and this is there in the GitHub repository as well. And then yeah, so RBAC cluster creation we can create by CLI as of now, and we will discuss this when we will be creating our RBAC cluster. And there's one particular beautiful commands which actually give you the service principal which you are actually using, right? So if you can use something called as is DCR list. Just so there's no ACR Azure Container Register which we are using, so it would just return null. And login service principal AD client ID. So is it login? So there's a command which I'll service principal. I'm not sure this course. username, password, service principal. Okay, so this is for the ACR, which particular ACR is using your particular service principal. You can run this with the service principal and the other one, and the password and the tenant ID. So it would show up which particular service principal using which particular Azure container registry. Because with AKS, it has a good integration with ACR. By default, you do not need to explicitly set up the feature. I'll just clear it out, so make it clear screen. And you can use something called as Periscope for dumping your logs from the cluster to any of your storage account. Okay, so what I gonna do for this, what you will do is, like, you need to install the preview commands of your extension. Az extension add name AKS preview. So the AKS preview extension would help you in collecting the logs each time whenever you want to collect the log from the cluster, because you're not able to log into the nodes or something. You can use this particular cluster, like you can dump your logs into your okay, let's go ahead and do it. So I'll go and check my storage account, which I know I've created for my. So I've created one particular storage account for my Cloud Shell. So let's go to all resources. Okay, let me go. I need to find my Cloud Shell storage account. For this, what I can do is, yes, I can open my shell and a file explorer. Yes, configure. No, not this. Start with manage file share. And then I'll be able to see my file share. So Azure Cloud Shell file share. Connect. So where is my storage account name? I can get my storage account. I think it should be something as Cloud Shell. Trying to get the storage account name. I think probably if I ping, then it may have written. Just ping. Sure, let's give it a try. Not this one for sure. This is not the one. So basically what happens, like, you can give the storage account name, okay, and then it would dump your logs into there. And you can open this Cloud Shell like this, and you can go to the folder which it would have created and dumped your all the cluster logs in there. So that's one thing. So you can try it out. Any doubts, please feel free to you can run these commands to get into it. Feel free to put up in the comment if it isn't working. I'll make another video. So enabling or disabling a log analytics workspace. So I'll go and I'll just resource list. Probably do not ask me any resource group name, because it already has a context of AKS cluster and the resource group. So you can see these are particular resources, or with respect to my subscription, it is showing these are the resources which I'm using. And So you can see which particular work name, the like log analytics workspace name it is using. And if you want to know more about it, as if you want to enable the log analytics, so what happens, your particular cluster using already a log analytics workspace, right? So if you go here, so it's using like if you go here, come here, then you just click get started. Since so this is the default RBAC cluster, the default log analytics which it would show you. So what you can do, like you can always go to the metrics cluster and just a minute. Insights. So if you go to your log analytics, so my log analytics is AKS log analytics. Okay, I go to AKS log analytics. I can go into here virtual machines. So you can see these are the virtual machines which we have spun, and this says non-connected. So we'll go here. So this is the one. So we can see any so you can see container insights in here. So we'll go and check whether it's that particular cluster is pushing the metrics or not. You just click on the insight metrics. Possibly we'll be seeing the case. So the node logs, which we can see the container logs from that particular node is already dumping in here. So what happens, like sometimes you will not be able to see this particular logs. The log section will not be displaying your particular log analytics which you have configured. So in that cases, so you can always select a scope. So I've set the scope and I can see the log analytics from the log analytics which we have, the workspace which we have integrated earlier. So this is one quick way, so because the UI do not defaultly loads up, and it would be like you can't actually go and see the metrics. So another way is a CLI way. The CLI way, like if you want to know, then you run this as a resource list which we have run, and we can see the log analytics workspace name in here, and you can find it out. So the other is by from here in the UI, and you can enable the log analytics by just az monitor, and then log analytics workspace list, and the resource list, workspace list, resource group, and subscription. But for this you actually need to give a complete resource ID of your log analytics workspace. So that you can get by just AZ resource list, and AZ resource list give you your subscription, the complete log analytics workspace URL path, and then you can enable by just using AZ AKS enable add-on. Add-ons monitoring, and this one would enable now your logs would be dumped from this particular AKS cluster to this particular workspace. So this is very useful in cases like your infra team had set up your AKS cluster with default AKS metrics, going into the different log analytics workspace, but you want to have a single workspace for your pre-prod and for your test, and for your prod you may want to put up a different, because you have with log analytics workspace you can actually run your cross workspace. Like if I have something else, two workspaces, then I can run cross queries across workspaces and get the data. So if you don't want to go with the cross workspace, then you can always open to dump your logs into the single workspace by this particular command. And then you can disable, like before enabling you need to go ahead and disable your particular log analytics workspace in order to use with another log analytics workspace. So I always suggest to run the disable first and then enable next. But keep, like your logs, if you're disabling and if your logs are very important, then you need to find a way to dump those particular logs from the old log analytics workspace to the new log analytics workspace. That's an FI. So another thing, like something like you can use this particular to know the logs of any of the um, events which are running on particular monitoring or something else. So look, you can set as a kubes, it'll get events, no resource found. It says, okay, look, let's see if we have something in default. Yes, so it get all the events which have been triggered for over the last 57 minutes for this particular any of the resources which have been triggered on the default. So this is one quick way of checking of whatever activities which are happening on your particular namespaces, and specifically for a shared k8s cluster, this is going to be very useful. And then like if you want to reset a default resource group from your cloud shell, then you can actually set up your default resource group, like by az configure default resource group. It's always required because starting when we were running this particular command, we got issue with, like it didn't recognize my resource where it says like where exactly your resource group is. Okay, and in that cases, like you can always set that by default, and even the subscription by default if you have multiple sub access to multiple subscription. And this is the one, like with which I was saying, which particular the service principal is used by your particular AKS cluster. It should so you can see if you go scroll up, this is every category, and I want to know the service principal which my cluster is using, and this is the log analytics which is using. And where is my service principal? It should be below itself, and this is the service principal client ID which it is using. Okay, so the client ID, which is this 3C. Okay, so without actually logging in, searching in about which particular service principal your cluster is using, you can use this particular command, and it's very useful. uh, and then there is something called as Helm also. You can use for deploying lot of your particular services on okay, Helm version. I've just okay, it's just level version command version. There's some things, like you have a version you can get. You can use Helm to install a lot of like I can use Helm search repo if I have configured any, because I didn't configure any, I should not get. But default, you see, since when Helm is installed, you will get these particular repos. And even if you like, probably Nginx should be there by default as of now. Let's see if it's there. Yes, so you can see Nginx ingress is there as part of the Helm repo. And you can actually use these images to deploy onto your AKS cluster. So we will see about that earlier next. And you have something called as Helm list all namespaces. So it would list all of the deployments images which you have done using. If you're running any of these particular images available above, then it will show like this, the app version, like ran Grafana image and Prometheus image, like that. Then it will show the version, what sort of version it is running. This is also very important for a quick troubleshooting. Credentials, and these are the steps which you can follow for installing your Nginx. And I will not go through them as of now. And yes, thanks. So these were the set of commands which are very widely used and daily used, in fact, I can say. So with this, I'll close this, and we'll meet on the next video. Thank you.